Hi everyone, this is Mari Craig, and you're listening to the Small Steps to Wellness show, a podcast where we discuss how we can achieve more wellness in our lives one small step at a time. For the past 6 odd years, I've taken a special interest in nutrition and I've changed the diet of my family on its head. But as I've dived deeper into the world of nutrition, I have learned that health is so much more than just what we put on our plate. This is why on this podcast we will be talking nutrition, mental health, being in alignment, holistic health care, self care, raising children, and more. We will also be hearing stories of women's journeys to overcome trauma and what it has taught them on the way. When we share our stories, we realize we are not alone and that things can change for the better. I'm so glad to have you with me on this journey as I explore what health and wellness truly encompass. If you like what you're hearing, please consider rating the show with a 5-star rating and sharing it with your friends. It really makes a big difference. Now, on with today's show.
Oh, it's so loud, isn't it? When they just go, "This meeting is being recorded." It's like this boom in your face.
Yeah.
What was I saying? Yes, if so, my sort of big goal with with having conversations like you and I are about to have is just if I can even reach one person where they go, "Oh, I felt so seen by Jen," or "I felt like she was me," or "I felt, I recognize so much," then my job is done. Is that kind of will you go by as well, or what's your goal?
Well, I say that my goal is to help as many women as I can to overcome stress because I don't want anyone else to suffer alone like I did for all those years. But I'm the same as you. If I help one person, then job done. Obviously, I'd love to help as many as possible.
Yeah,
Um,
but it's like if you can actually just reach one person where they go,
yeah,
that changed my life.
yeah, absolutely. Because
I mean,
that's I had some help and some support, and it changed my life. So I know how powerful it is. So if I can do that for somebody else, then that would be amazing.
bonus. I've
Yeah.
got Jen Wilson with me today, a wellness coach, and she actually reached out to me and said, "Oh, Mari, can we have a chat? I'd love to talk to you on the podcast." And I love this. I feel so seen, I think, which is what we were going to talk about a little bit as well. But what I thought was really interesting about what you sent me, but what you do is stress, and it's one of those almost like a buzzword. We're like, "Oh, I'm so stressed," as if that's like almost like a badge of honor. But I think
Absolutely.
your story, which I'm really looking forward to hear. I was going to say I'm excited to hear, but actually, not excited to hear about somebody else's pain, are you? But I'm really interested in hearing your story. I think it it will show us that stress is something that we need to take seriously. It's not something that we just, you know, carry with pride or anything.
Definitely not. And I agree with you. The word is so openly used. Oh, I'm stressed. Yes, we all have levels of stress. We need stress in our lives, don't we? It helps us to get things done when we're under pressure. But stress just becomes a massive problem when it's chronic, when it's long term, when it's with you for a really long time. And I think that people use the word lightly, and it can actually be really quite serious.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. You were
yeah.
saying this actually. Can I, before we hit record, um, I want to ask you this first because, or maybe you can reshare it. You were reading this magazine, you said, back in the good old days when you had time.
Oh,
You were
yeah.
reading this magazine. Tell me.
Yeah, so prior to that, I hadn't been feeling particularly good. I had all these things going on, and I thought something was really seriously wrong with me, but I didn't know what it was. I was quite young as well. I was kind of like in my sort of late 20s. And I say that's quite young because, you're kind of fairly new in the workplace and you haven't really experienced all those different demands and things placed on you for very long. So I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know what it was, and I didn't really know what to do about it because I didn't know what to say to anyone. And yeah, I was reading this magazine article one day, and it was like a two-page spread about stress. And I read it, and I really resonated with everything it said. And then it had this little box in the corner with all these symptoms of stress, and I had all of them. So I said to myself, "Oh, I can actually picture where I was in my old house." I went, "Oh, I'm just stressed." like, it was a relief that I didn't have a really serious illness. So for me, I'm just stressed. So I put the magazine down, I packed it, and I just carried on because I thought, I'm just stressed.
Because everyone is just stressed, and it's just one of those things that we are.
Yeah. And nobody really tells you, you know, like this article, it was very much bringing you aware of what the symptoms were and how it can affect you. Not in a massive amount of detail, may I add, not to what I know now. But there was nothing actually within that guided you or directed you or said, like, for example, if you've got all the symptoms, this is a problem, you need to get help. Or if you're experiencing such and such, that's when you really shouldn't ignore it. There was nothing like that. It was just kind of a matter of fact article that's what stress is. So that's what I just accepted it as being, just stress. I didn't understand it. I didn't know anything about it. So that
Where
was
were
it.
you in your life when that, so where were you in your life, like, I guess work-wise, everything wise,
Yeah,
when
so it was really work that brought the stress on. I was thrown into a role that I really wasn't suited to. At the time, I didn't know that. I just thought I was failing and I wasn't capable, and why can't I do it? What's wrong with me? But obviously, in hindsight and on reflection, as I've got to know myself better as a person over the years, because I still class myself as being quite young then and new in the workplace, and you're still discovering yourself all through your life, never mind like in your 20s, are you? So yeah, I just realised now in hindsight I wasn't suited to it, but it put me under a lot of pressure and I wasn't coping. And it was in that workplace that all these symptoms started to kind of add up, symptoms that you dismiss as something else, and then there's something else, and then something else gets added on, but you dismiss it as being to do with that, you know. And my answer to that was to leave that job, because I thought, well, if I get away from this job, everything will be all right. So I left and I went and got another job. Unfortunately for me, I got an even more stressful job. It was a new role and they pretty much were making it up as they went along. I was put under even more pressure. I was bullied by my manager. And what I realised now, I hadn't dealt with the stress and the impact it had on me from the first job. I just moved to the next job. So I was still kind of carrying that, but not realising. But it kind of goes away because you're in a new job, aren't you? And it's all new and you're learning. So your mind's refocused. But it was there. And it was within that job that my symptoms became really severe. And I was signed off with stress, anxiety, and depression. Now, me being me, I only stayed off for a few weeks because I thought, well, it's the job. If I don't go and face it, it's never going to get any better, you know. So I think I had like 6 weeks initially. And then I went back. And needless to say, going back to face it wasn't really the answer. Hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it?
Isn't it just?
Yeah. So I went back and it was a matter of months before I was signed off long term. It got to the point where I can only describe it as feeling completely numb to the world around me. I felt nothing about anyone or anything. People would talk to me. I could see the mouths move, but I couldn't tell you anything anybody had said. And it was actually my mum. I was well in my 30s then, my early 30s, and my mum actually said, because it doesn't matter how old you are, does it? Your mum gets involved, and she's like, if you don't go to the doctors, Jen, I am going to physically come to your house and take you. And I was like, oh, do you know, if it'll just get her off my back, I'll just go, you know, just give us a break. So I went. Yeah, and the doctor took one look at me and he was like, yeah, this is like serious, you're getting signed off long term now. And he just said to me, what you're describing is you're kind of just shutting down because you can't mentally take anymore. There's just no capacity left for anything. Yeah. He said, so that thing where you're seeing people speaking but can't tell anything being said. He said, your brain
just record when I couldn't hear anything, you couldn't hear anything, bit like that. You're talking, but no, it's actually
yeah, there was just nothing there. So I was signed off long term, and it was people saying burnout. People don't really know what burnout is, but it's basically when you just can't take anymore. That's the simplest way to describe it. When you've had so much pressure placed on you mentally, and then the physical impact.
Right, so you were in the middle of talking, and then my system completely failed. But we were So I saw your mouth moving, a bit like the burnout. I couldn't hear a thing. I couldn't
I was just trying to demonstrate to you what it felt like.
Did you mute yourself? No, but we were talking, I think you were saying about people don't understand burnout because it's but I think it's literally in the word, isn't it? Burn out. If you think a candle that's burned to the ground, or a flame that's, there's nothing more to burn through. That's literally what it is, isn't it?
It is. And for me personally, I'm a really busy person. My days are full, and I'm not saying busy as in wearing that as a badge of honor. I can get lots done. I like to be doing. I'm that kind of person. I went from that to, I would literally, my husband, he wasn't my husband at the time, he is now, but he'd come in from work and say, oh, what have you done today? And I'd be like, well, I got up, I got dressed, and I took the dogs for a little walk. That was all I could do. That was all I could do in my day. That there was just nothing, that's that feeling of like nothing left. That took me all day just to do one dog walk, apart from getting myself up and getting dressed.
How did that make you feel when you first were signed off and burnout, and you not feeling like you're coping at work? And what have you done? To me, I'm hearing then, what have you done that's been productive?
Yeah, if I'm honest, when I was off, I was so numb, I didn't feel anything. I was just kind of floating around, existing. There was literally was just nothing there. But prior to that, when I left that first job, it does feel like you feel like you're failing. You feel like you're not good enough. Why can't I do this job? Is there something wrong with me? Like, why am I feeling like this? Everybody else around me seems to be okay. Why is it affecting me? All those kinds of questions. And then going into that next job, and then feeling like, again, you're not doing well enough because people are putting pressure on you and pulling your work apart in front of you. And
in hindsight, do you think that you weren't in the right job, or do you think, or maybe it's a combination actually, that the working life or the work culture here is slightly insane, and you're expected to do things that no human being is supposed to be able to sustain long term?
I think I wasn't in the right job. Like, it wasn't suited to my personality, being in the position I was in, and I wasn't getting the support I should have had. So there was a lot of pressure on me. But then I also think there's that other flip side of it where you're just expected also to do so much, which is fine if you're in a good place. But if you're already not in a good place, it's not fine. And I think, like, even if you're in a good place and you're getting this pressure, that can suddenly become a bad place, can it? Because you've been under that pressure for so long. But I think if I'd understood and I'd been aware and I knew what all these symptoms were that were building up and how I could do things to manage them better, to take the edge off them so they didn't become so bad, maybe things wouldn't have been so bad. But then when you're in it, would you? Because I'm learning from my own experience of not just experiencing one but two burnouts. We tend to not help ourselves till things get really, really bad.
And even then, and but also then I think it's not too late, but then the hill is so big to climb, isn't it? Because we haven't taken those measures. But I'm also thinking, so having two kids at school, one about to start secondary school, not about to, but next year starting secondary school. I just wonder whether things need to be put in place, and I think it's changing a little bit, but things need to be put in place already at school age so that we have more tools, so that we're more able to deal with the demands of adult life. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but
I totally do.
You've got a kid too. Yeah.
I had this conversation with someone the other week because it was about the school curriculum. And it's a conversation you could really go on about, isn't it? But my thoughts are that whether it's coping techniques for the demands and expectations, everything placed on you, but I also think there's a mix now from when I was Owen's age and a teenager. Well, he's not a teenager now, but I'm thinking back, teenage years are the most challenging, aren't they? It was very different then. And I think kids now should be taught strategies and techniques for coping with all that's to come at them, because I think even before they get into the workplace, stress in the workplace, they're already going to be exposed to so much before they even get there.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's some things being done, but at the same time, they are, I mean, I cannot believe the stuff they're already learning at, you know, such a young age, and that there is kind of expected of them to, you know, to know about and to be able to cope with. I mean, I do think we're learning some sort of ways to manage things. I also think, though, as parents, we have a role to play whereby we, I suppose, focus on doing less for the kids, not doing less for the kids, but having the kids do less, because I see so many kids, and mine have been the same, where they've got activities left, right, and center. They haven't even got the time to sit down and just be, or sit down and just breathe, or do nothing. It's like go, 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 and then they have a meltdown because they're exhausted, right?
Yeah.
So I wonder if as parents we also need to, you know, take a step back and go, do they need to be doing all these activities? I feel like we're in this, and I don't know if it's different where you live, but I feel like we're in this little bit of a hamster wheel of everything's a competition. We've got to be good at this and good at that and show a certificate here and do a grade whatever here. And when actually what we should focus on at a very young age is cooperation, working together as a team, because that is what life is supposed to be like, right? Instead, this is like, you know, sharp elbows, getting ahead in the workplace, getting ahead at school, getting ahead to get into the best uni, or, you know, there seems to be an awful lot of competition. And I'm just not sure that everyone's suited to that.
Couldn't agree more. And I'm really strict about the amount of activities my son does. One, because I don't want to spend every day running around different places. Because for me, I have a boundary in place for my own self-care and my stress levels after everything I've experienced, that I'm not willing to do that. If people don't like the sound of that and think that I'm being selfish, then that's fine. But I'll always protect myself now after everything I've experienced. And I think all parents should be open to not feeling guilty about looking after themselves, but that's a whole new conversation. And two, like, Owen likes time to chill out. Like he does 3 things a week: Tuesday, Thursday, and a Saturday. And I know Wednesday will come in, because it's the middle of the week as well, the Wednesday. They've been at school, it's like, yeah, nothing on tonight. You know, and he loves the stuff he does, but he also needs that time out, just time to sit and do whatever he wants. So I think it's really important. And I think that's a life lesson as you move forward, before you get wrapped up in life and all the expectations of all the things you're doing and you're busy, that you do that.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I'm in the process of cancelling a couple of things from next term, not because they're not great things, but because you also even, I mean, something happened at school the other day, and my kids didn't tell me about it. It was a nice activity. And I just realized, gosh, I signed them up to this thing, but I forgot to tell them about it. I didn't even think they went to this thing. And then one of the other mums who'd been helping out at the school thing said, oh, no, they went. I saw them. You know, it was great, blah, blah, blah. And I just realized, gosh, I need to talk to my kids more, because I come home and I haven't even got a clue what they, because I'm so busy sort of sorting the baby and all of these things. And I'm just thinking, goodness me. We we need more time to just have normal conversations.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you said so this is your first burnout we're talking about now, is it?
Yeah, so that initially when I was signed off, yeah. So I went through the various channels of different like cognitive behavioral therapy, counselling, all that kind of stuff that gets recommended to you, and none of it really helped, if I'm honest. I'm not knocking it, but it didn't help me. And I spent a really, really long time, like, I just wanted someone to flick a switch and make it all go away. I was like, why can't somebody just make this go away? Like, please, just somebody make it go away. And then I just remember waking up one day and nothing specific has happened, but I just thought, do you know what? There's only me that can make this go away. Now, I still didn't have a clue what to do, by the way, but I had the realization that I was leaning on everyone else and trying to rely on everything else to make it better, and it wasn't working. So I thought, I've got to do this. So I still had no idea what to do. What I did do was I decided that I needed to get out of where I was working. So I had a complete career change. I went from like an office corporate job and I retrained as a personal trainer. Fairly random, you might think, but I'd actually before I'd hit the burnout, I did attend an exercise class regularly twice a week. And it was kind of a bit of a saviour at the time, because although I didn't want to go and I talked myself out of staying while she was chatting and taking your money, I always used to come out feeling amazing. So I had that knowledge that there was some power in exercise when you're struggling with stress and everything that goes with it. And I also developed an interest in nutrition because I developed irritable bowel brought on by stress, which meant I then couldn't eat all these foods I used to be able to eat. So although that sounds a really random choice, I did have an interest in exercise and food. So I did that. And then I got a job at a rehabilitation gym working with people with all different kinds of chronic health conditions, which just reinforced my belief in the power of exercise for so many things for people. And it was great. It was so relaxed. There was no stress. It was generally people over the age of 65 that came to classes. You stand around and get a good crack every day. You know, it was lovely. There was no stress, but there was always, I kind of explain it like it was just always at the surface. Like there's just a very thin lid on the top of it. And it would take the slightest thing to, like, I say tip me over the edge. I know that sounds a bit dramatic, but to make me in floods of tears or to feel like the world had come crashing down around me, sort of thing. And I just went on like that for years because I didn't know it wasn't normal. I didn't know what to do. So I just kind of plodded on. And then I became pregnant. I had my baby. And then I decided to start a business because when I had Owen, I was out with when you have dogs, you have to be out whatever, even if you haven't slept all night, don't you?
Yep.
So I was out with baby in the pram and the dogs every day. And even though I didn't want to go some days, I was so tired. You know, you drag your feet for the first 20 minutes. After that, I'd feel amazing. And I'd be like, where are all these other mums and babies? I need to get these women out. You know, so I set up a business doing outdoor classes for mums and babies, which again was really lovely. It was amazing. I was outdoors like 4 days a week, meeting all these amazing women and the babies. And then I specialised in the pelvic health I was saying before, because I realised more women had all these problems. And then 2019, it was about November time, I thought, if I was working for somebody else, I'd be going to the doctors now and be asking to be signed off with stress, because the symptoms had been building up again, like probably for a good 12 months prior to that. And if I'm honest, like I've said, they never really went away. And when I look back on my maternity leave, that first year, because I took a year off, was amazing. You're in this bubble, aren't you? It was my first child. I had no other distractions. It was amazing. But then once that ended and back into the routine of work and everything else, I wasn't really in a good place. And I remember, like, when I look back now, actually, there's a few baby things I went to. I'd have these absolute emotional meltdowns, and the people of the groups would take Owen off me and say, go and have yourself 5 minutes. And that happened quite a lot. And I look back now and I think, God, I really wasn't good at all. You know, so
yeah, but at the time, you said earlier, you're in the middle of it. It's hard to see yourself from the outside when you are literally in the middle of the storm.
Yeah, I really was again. And anyway, so these symptoms, I knew they'd been building up. I kept thinking, oh, they'll go away. And when you have your own business, you can't just really go to the doctors and say, well, can you sign me off? Because it's your business. You know, it's not really that easy. So I thought, oh, it's not as bad as last time. It'll be okay. I'll just carry on. So I carried on. That was like November 2019. And then it got to 2020 when the lockdown happened, the COVID lockdown. And I just remember looking to my husband and I just said, thank goodness somebody has given me permission to stop, because I couldn't run my classes. It was the biggest like relief. But then literally the next day, because that had happened, I just hit the wall. Like, it was, you know, when you just let it go because you know now you don't need to put the fight up anymore.
It's why we get poorly on the weekend, I think.
Yeah, I just hit the wall, and I loved the lockdown, and I feel really bad for people that had a really awful time. But for me, just getting up, we were going out for walks, we were just pottering in it. I say I loved it. I loved it because I could really slow down and stop. It was still had it, don't get me wrong, it still had its challenges of trying to homeschool and everything else, which is another story. But I think it took me till about September to come to. And when I say come to, I mean just to like be able to like think straight and just feel a bit more normal, although I think I've been stressed for so long I don't even think I knew what normal was anymore, if I'm honest.
No.
But I could see a bit clearer and think a bit straight. And I just thought to myself, like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? This has got to stop. I've got a 4-year-old son. Like, it's significantly impacting my relationship with him. What am I doing? And that was like my turning point.
How was it affecting? How was it affecting your relationship?
Because I was just irritable with him, like snappy. I'd rush to get him to bed at night because I had work to do. I had no boundaries between business and home life because again, in hindsight, I was so stressed again. I was just kind of on this high alert. I couldn't switch off. And I wasn't present. Like, I just wasn't present. You know, when you're there, but you're not there.
Oh, yeah.
And unfortunately for me, Owen at quite a young age would start to say, you're not listening to me, are you? And I'd be like, of course I am. Well, what did I just say? Like, shit, I don't know. Sorry, didn't mean to swear. But
no, go for it.
I don't know. And I just thought, yeah, I thought, what am I doing? And I know everybody like wants to be there for the children, do the best. Like, we had a really difficult time conceiving. I went through like quite a lot of trauma and stress actually having him. So for me, that just felt even stronger, where I was looking at him like, what am I doing? Like, after everything I've been through to bring you into this world, why am I in this position where I am so stressed? I'm not present, I'm irritable, I'm snappy, I'm not being the best version of myself. Like, that was it. So at that point, I just thought, I need to do something. So all those things people had told me a few years prior that you should try, because you don't. I'm admitting it, I didn't, because I haven't got time for that. I remember like trying to go to yoga. Yoga's really good. I couldn't. I was like, when is it finished yet? How long have we got left? Because I was so wired, like that, so stressed. I just couldn't relax into it. So I did dabble in a few things over the years, but I could never settle to anything. But I did. I got really strict with my boundaries between work and home life. I started much more self-care, and I did feel better. So that was, you know, like September, October time of 2020. I did feel better. So I just carried on. I thought, well, I feel better and I'm putting all these things in place. And my dates go a little bit blurry, but although I felt better, something still wasn't right. So a lot of change, but there was still something that wasn't right. And I find it really hard to put into words, but I felt really, really, really unsettled. And my mind was just racing, like all day, every day. I didn't know whether to continue with the business. Should I continue? Should I pack in? Should I get a job? Should I do this? Should I do that? What should I do? Why do I feel like this? It was just this constant, like, whirring, messy noise is like the only way I can describe it, really. And I thought,
but you're also saying, what should I? That's interesting that you're saying, what should I, instead of what do I want to, right?
Yeah, because you can't. Clearly, I still wasn't thinking straight, so I didn't really know what I wanted.
What is expected of me?
I didn't know what I wanted to do, really, you know. So I thought, I need some more help, because I've done all the things that I can do within my power, you know, and I feel better, but something's still amiss. So I started working with a coach, and it was somebody that I know locally. We actually met on a dog walk. It was really random, but you know, you just meet someone and you click straight away.
Oh yeah.
And I knew what she did, and then I just messaged, can you please help me? So I met her for a walk. I can still remember that walk, and kind of like the mess I was in, really, because I think once I'd admitted again that I still wasn't quite where I wanted to be, you let the barrier down, don't you? And the emotions really start to flow again, don't they? So anyway, I started working with her, and she was much more about mindset. There was other stuff in there, but the big part of what she did. And I think I'd only been working with her like for a couple of months, if that. I'd only done like a few sessions with her. And I was sat one night with my dog. I don't even know what I was doing. And I just suddenly went, oh, I know what I could do. This is, I'm not making this up. This is really what happened. I just went, oh, I know what I could do. My dog, like, she looks at me, and I was like, I was on my own as well. I don't normally talk to myself, but my husband was out, so I had to talk to my dog. And I was like, I know what I could do. I was like, I could like train to be a coach, and I could help other women, like, so they don't have to struggle for all those years like I did, because it was a struggle on my own, but I do that. And then I was like, well, do wellness coaches even exist? So good old Google came out, and I Googled, I was like, oh, they do exist. Oh yeah, I could do that. And then I talked myself out of it. I thought, Jen, don't be ridiculous. Like, how could you possibly 6 to 8 weeks ago, from not being able to think straight to suddenly saying you want to retrain to be a wellness coach to support other women? Like, where's that come from? So I parked it. Yeah, I know. I parked it, but it didn't leave me. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I just couldn't stop thinking about it. So, and what Rachel I was working with taught me, she was very much into intuition and everything as well. So she was very much about going with what feels right, and these things come to you, and I'm like, yeah, whatever kind of thing. But the more like she taught me this stuff, I was like, yeah, this is too strange not to be, do you know what I mean? All these things. And then all these other things started happening. So this barrier was put in away from my fitness business. And then this second barrier was put in my way from my fitness business, like challenging me whether I should continue, because people were trying to charge me money for using outdoor space, and somebody was trying to charge me for something else. And I'm like, are these all signs? Like all these, and these other things, I can't exactly remember the other things now, but all these little things started happening. And I thought, right, I've got to listen to this, because somebody somewhere is trying to like send me a message that I'm supposed to be doing this. So I did it. I wrapped my fitness business up. I told everyone I'm lucky I was in the position where my husband said he would support us financially. So I wrapped up and I signed up to do the wellness coach training. And I spent that year, 2021, training. And what was really fascinating about the training, I learned about these 12 elements that affect your overall wellness. And every single one, at some point over a decade of struggling with chronic stress, every single one I had experienced and in my way muddled through and tried to make better. So as I was going through my training, all these things just were slotting into place. I genuinely struggled to put it into words, the feeling, because it was like, this is meant to be. Like, and
I guess you might have felt seen as well, right?
Yeah, and I've always had the opinion of, no matter how challenging things are, like, things happen for a reason. So when you come out on the other side, I always try to reflect back, like, well, that happened because of that. So as all these things were slotting into place, I was like, well, it might have been challenging the last decade or so, but that's all happened for a reason. Because now, like, I genuinely feel now that along with that training and my personal experience, like, I'm in a really privileged position now where I can like help other women and support them and guide them through what changes they can make to overcome that, so that they overcome it in a few months as opposed to 10 years. You know, it's as simple as that. And that's how it happened. I didn't plan to do this. If you'd asked me 5 years ago, what will you be doing in 5 years? You know, like some people do that, don't they? Like, in 5 years, I want to be doing such and such. I wouldn't have said, well, I'll be a wellness coach and I'll be in my own business and I'll be supporting other women to overcome stress. That just never would have been on there. And it's just evolved like so naturally. I find it hard to put into words how it kind of happened and how it felt. It just felt so right.
Yeah. Do you know, I speak to so many people who've gone through lots of different things. And what seems to be kind of a recurring theme is that once you get through to the other side, a lot of, no, actually not a lot of, most women have said, I'm actually grateful for the trauma.
Yeah.
Because where I am now, where it has brought me.
Absolutely.
It's hard to see that, I guess, when you're in the middle of it or when you're working your way through it. But sort of coming through the other side, you can go, actually, this happened. And yeah, it wasn't great at the time, but goodness me, all these things that it has brought me.
Yeah, definitely.
It sounds insane to be grateful for something bad happening, but I've heard it from so many people.
I think though, like, you've almost got to be, though, and there's two ways of looking at things, isn't there? You could dwell on that and not do anything with it. And I didn't have this grand master plan that I've had a really crap 10, 12 years. I'm now going to do this amazing thing to make all that worthwhile. It was never a plan. It just evolved so naturally that it almost feels a little bit uncanny how it all kind of happened. Like, when I look back, I'm like, yeah, that's kind of strange. But yeah, if I hadn't experienced all that, I wouldn't be here doing what I do now.
Exactly.
And interestingly, I was chatting to my friend the other day who, she's like this far from a full burnout, and you think, well, she's my friend, surely I should be helping her. Well, I would love to, but she's not ready, because she came to me for coaching last year. She did a bit and she disappeared off. She's ready now because things have got really, really bad. And unfortunately, like, I would love to help people before they got there, but it's human nature, I think, isn't it? We tend to dig ourselves out once we're in too deep. We don't tend to like do the stuff to stop
This
us
is it.
getting...
Prevention is better than a cure, but it's so hard for us all, I think, to grasp that. I had a woman on talking about her MS condition, and she was like, she's now also a nutrition coach, and she's like, I want to help people so that they don't have to potentially go through what I went through, what I am going through, what I have been going through. But I think it's hard to picture yourself in a really bad situation until you're in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And also, as you in your case, understanding this is actually a situation that yeah, it might be common, but it's not normal.
Yeah, and I think that's the message I'm trying to get across, and I might feel like I'm struggling to get across, because women, they accept it. This is just the way life is. I'm busy, I've got kids, I've got to work, and I'm expected to do this, and this, and you're just doing it, and you think that's just the way it is, but it really isn't the way it is. It doesn't have to be like that. It's just that nobody actually tells you any differently. Nobody actually says, well, if you try this, and this, it's not going to take all that stuff away, because life is stressful. That's just the way it is. But if you've got the coping mechanism, so like for me now, I was one of the clients I was working with, she said to me, oh, do you still do all that stuff every day now? And I'm like, yeah, like, now I know what tools I need. So if I didn't do my self-care, I've got non-negotiables I do every day, then I know, just by my nature and how we can get sucked into, I know that I'll have that wobble, and I'll never go back to that level of stress. But it's now having the tools that I use every day to make sure that I keep it at bay. And then when something really stressful does happen, it doesn't take that out of your life, because that's not life, is it? But it means that you cope with it better, and that you recover from it much quicker. It's not this stressful thing happens and then it's this massive downward spiral. I'm not saying it's still easy, but you get through it much better, and you recover quicker, and you're back on an even keel.
Yeah,
Like,
but you've empowered yourself with all these tools. And it was interesting when you said also that when you were talking about how you came to work with a coach, so you said, I did all the things that I could do, and I realized I needed help from someone. And I was just thinking, oh, I hope it's going to be a coach now. and there would, that you employed, because I've used coaches before, and I find it really empowering. And I've said this so many times, because you get to the solution yourself. They are there to ask you the right questions, to ask really, really good, powerful questions.
Yeah.
But I think one of the differences that I heard from sort of, let's say, burnout 1 and burnout 2 for you is that you had therapy, you had people almost like, well, you were the patient, whereas I find, and that has its place by all means, but I find when you use a coach, you are more on equal terms, and you're coming to the solutions kind of together, or you more so than the coach. They just ask the questions that enable you to go, oh, hang on, this is what I think,
Yeah.
And so I don't think it comes out of thin air, or it came out of thin air that you thought, oh, I'm gonna be a coach myself. It comes from you realizing, actually, this is really powerful. I'm learning how to help myself through this. I now have these tools. I can help other people.
Yeah.
I think coaches are so amazing. If you get a good coach, it can be really life-changing.
The Rachel that I work with, I said to her, I said, you have changed my life. And I genuinely mean it. Like, without what we did together, like, I wouldn't be sat here now. It's the most powerful thing. And a lot of it was very uncomfortable, I'm not going to lie. And one of my favorite sayings I use with all clients I work with is, get comfortable feeling uncomfortable, because whether it's that process of like discovering things about yourself, or it's that process of saying no to people, or putting boundaries in place, or communicating things people maybe don't want to hear. Anything that's working towards making things better for you, there's going to be elements of feeling uncomfortable. And you know, interestingly, my biggest one, when I started with Rachel, she challenged me and said, I really need you to slow down and relax more. And I just like laughed in her face. I'm like, that's never going to happen. Like, you want me to sit still? Like, no, that's never going to happen. And interestingly, I started working with her in the January. The December before, I purposely didn't promote anything new for the new year. I just kept the classes I had that were ticking over, because I knew, and I think this is a really important message, like, and I don't want this to put people off, but you need a little bit of space to work through some of this stuff. Like, you can't just take it on with everything else that's going on. So I purposely didn't take stuff on, because I'm just going to allow myself a little bit of breathing space. I was still working, but I wasn't going crazy doing lots. I knew I needed that breathing space to work through whatever I was going to be doing, because at the time I didn't know what I was going to be doing. And a lot of it was uncomfortable, but the big part for me was that slowing down, relaxing more. And because suddenly I didn't have as much to do, that was open to me. But oh my days, I fought against that, because it was so unnatural, because I'd spent so many years, what you said before, waiting about being in that sympathetic nervous system, that constant, like, yeah. I'd like to say I'm far from that now. I'll happily sit and chill out and read a book and relax and do whatever.
Without feeling guilty.
It's a funny thing. Absolutely. And just coming back to what I said about that, having to have that space, people might be like, well, there's no point in ever doing any coaching if you need time to process stuff. That's exactly the reason why the first step in my program is called Create Space, because everybody, I don't care who you are, and I'd love someone to argue with me that they haven't got something they are doing that they don't need to be doing. We accumulate so much crap. Oh, I'll do that because it's easier than asking someone. I'll do that because it's easier than, and you just, before you know it, you're doing all this stuff, you run ragged, you're doing stuff that doesn't need to be done, but then you're so busy doing it, you haven't got the time to sit and reflect, well, why the hell am I doing it, and is it necessary? And then when you do stop to reflect, because I've done this with so many people, when they're like, why the hell am I doing this? Like, why am I, that doesn't even need to be done, you know? And then before you know it, you've suddenly crossed all these things out, and then you've got some space to like do what you need to do.
Right. Yeah. I know. Oh, I think we've all been guilty of that. I'm just, yeah. Also, like, I've got a couple of hours. That's enough time to have a little Christmas workshop with my kids before 20 people descend on my house, right? Yeah, easy. And I literally had this thought on Saturday, and I thought, what's wrong with me?
Just have the time out doing nothing.
You don't need to be doing that. And then I kind of had words with myself. And obviously I did not start that. And we did it on Sunday when we had nothing on. But I'm just thinking sometimes that I just need to be, or I can, therefore I should. But I think somebody said to me a while ago, should is a 4-letter word. It's like, we shouldn't do anything. We do whatever the hell we want, kind of. I mean, we are parents, we can't do whatever we want. But my youngest daughter keeps saying to me, when you're grown up, you can just do what you want all the time. And I'm like, sweetheart, you've no idea. But there are so many things we don't need to be doing. Like, it doesn't matter if, we have the cook, like the frozen food company. It's quite nice food, and we have one down the road, and there's been a couple of times I've gone in there thinking, let's make my life easier for myself just for a couple of days, and then I look at the back of the packs, I'm like, I could be cooking this, and my husband is like, but that's literally the point, that yes, of course you can be cooking that, but also sometimes it's okay to just leave it be and make life easier for yourself. We don't have to be these self-sacrificing, holier than thou sort of super moms, because those don't exist. We think they exist, but that's because we see their Instagram life or their TikTok life or their Facebook life, and that's not real life.
Yeah, it definitely isn't. And I think what we're all really guilty of as well is we feel like we've got to fill every minute. So going back to what I was saying about that stopping, like, sit and read a book. Well, I could be cleaning the car, or I could be spring cleaning that room, or I could do the windows, or I've done my tumble dryer filter, you know what I mean? You feel like you've got to fill every minute. And I've seen this. I was talking to a woman, like one of the mums on the school run, and she was on about going from a part-time job. I'm going to get more hours, and I'm like, well, why are you doing that? Well, because I've just got the spend. I'm like, well, why don't you have that time doing something else? Because surely, like, you could have loads of things done in that, that aren't work, or you could just like relax or just do something you want to do, and you could see your brain ticking. And she went away, and she came back the next day. She went, I've turned down that job at work. I've told them I'm not going to take it because I don't really know why I was. Why would I want to fill my time? But just because I didn't tell her, I just slightly challenged her. And my friend's the same. Like, she's just significantly reduced her hours at work. She didn't want to go off sick. That was her choice. I personally thought she should have done, but she didn't want to. So she significantly reduced her hours, took an extra day off. And I went around, she's like, right, so today I'm going to clean the car out and I'm going to do this. And I'm like, why? Like, didn't you just significantly reduce your time to get like a little bit of breathing space? So I see this all the time, that we have to, I don't know what it is with us, we have to fill every minute of every day with something, but that something is never sitting having a cup of tea or going for a nice, whatever it is you like to do that's for you. It's
because
crazy.
it feels guilty, especially if you have somebody else that you live with who might work full time and be the breadwinner. Then you feel guilty for not doing that all the time. But I think especially for mums, there's a lot of brain power that goes into managing your children's lives. That sounds a bit sort of corporate, but there's a lot of brain power that goes into that. Yeah, no, it's huge.
But that comes the same as anything with your mental health. It's not seen.
Yeah.
So people don't value or appreciate it. Like, well, mums do because we get it. Yeah. But other people don't get it because they're not doing it, and because it's not seen, because you're not physically doing the thing, it's not seen as a problem. But the mental loads is huge. It really is.
Yeah. And then that takes me to a whole different topic of, is our society a little bit messed up at the moment, because we're all expected to work a million hours and have their house pristine, have the car pristine, have the children getting into Oxbridge or passing the 11 plus, or being the captain of their football team, or all of these things. Are we expecting too much of ourselves, and is society not geared towards this actually being achievable? And also, why do we feel the need to be so bloody productive all the time? Because surely that's, I've always been like, I'm the oldest in the family, but like being a good girl and always achieving and always performing and always doing what everyone's expecting of me. And I think sometimes that can be a little bit of a recipe for disaster. And I don't know if you have the same background, but I think a lot of us, this doesn't come from nothing. Burnout doesn't come from nothing. Feeling stressed doesn't come from nothing. It comes from, I think, for a lot of us, this whole need to feel like you're on top of everything all the time, because I can't for the life of me disappoint people or let people down, because then who am I? Because you define yourself by what you can be for other people, or what you can produce, or what you can or how much you can solve other people's problems, I suppose.
Yeah, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to be something that we're perhaps not, and that's a stressor in itself, isn't it? Before you add everything else on top of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But I mean, for me, I was just going to say, for me, like, I know, like, that being a parent can be stressful. Like, my stress wasn't brought on solely from being a parent, and I've spoken to a couple of other women that they didn't realize, when I've coached them, actually, how far back their stress triggers. And I think this is probably more common than we realize. So, someone, she'd had a stressful job a really, really long time ago, but when she talked about it, the emotion was still raw. Yeah. So she'd never dealt with that. She carried that. And then life continues, doesn't it? And it's this layering up, this accumulation of, as you've got like a backpack and someone's just like putting extra stuff in every day, every week, every month, every year, and it builds and builds and builds and builds. And we can just suddenly think, well, it's the stress of being a parent. It not necessarily is. It's maybe all the stress you've had up to that, because that's another stressor. Being a parent's a massive stressor. And I know, speaking from experience, that like probably wasn't in the best place mentally to do that particularly well. I'm not saying I've been bad at it, but like in terms of being irritable and not being my best kind of self, if you know what I mean. So I think for a lot of people, it can be in some people, it can be really obvious, can't it? They can be in a job, the job's really stressful, I'm not coping, that's what it is, which was me initially. But then from that point to this point, there's been a lot of other stuff happened in there that I haven't talked about today that's added to all that.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of unlayering and unpicking, really, but it's kind of worth it to.
Even if it's uncomfortable, as you say.
It is. It's really. I sat with some very uncomfortable stuff. I didn't enjoy it at all, but it was worth it.
Yeah.
It was really worth it.
It's like peeling an onion, isn't it? Layer after layer comes off. Yeah. No, there's a lot I could go into from my own experience as well. But I think for me, it's the need to always do well, because otherwise, if I don't do well academically, who even am I as a person? That's been a biggie for me, and that's been stressful. And when all of a sudden you're put in an environment where you're not the best automatically, that can also be, or has been for me, in the past, not a recipe for disaster, but it's been really, really, really hard because I wasn't equipped with the tools to deal with just not being top of the class, let's say. And you carry that with you, and then you go, well, I'm not good enough at anything. And when people kind of make comments on your performance or whatever, you go, yeah, of course that wasn't great. But then it also gets to a point where people go, oh my gosh, you did so well at that was impressive, I really loved it. And you just go, no, that wasn't that impressive. What are you talking about? I'm not very good at this. So they and these things go like back to teenage years.
There's so many, sorry to interrupt, there's so many things that can create that stress. And you've just said then there's two people I can think of straight away that when we've looked back, it's something that happened in teenage years and they're like, wow, that's still affecting me now. So I think like what I would say to people is, if you're aware of like what the signs and symptoms of stress are, and you know that you need to deal with that, it's within the dealing part that you'll unpick like what it is, because we sometimes we think we might know, but we don't always know.
That's where a coach can come in, though, isn't it? Like what you're doing now, to just have those conversations. But do you know what I realized? We haven't actually gone through some of the symptoms of stress, because you remember when you going back to the magazine, almost full circle, where you were reading these symptoms. And you thought, oh, yay, I don't have a serious illness. But actually, before we hit record, we were talking about how stress can lead to so many chronic diseases. So it is a biggie. But what were some of the symptoms that you had then, apart from massive brain fog?
There's an awful lot of symptoms. But for me, so like feeling irritable, like kind of like, like wound up, that feeling of overwhelmed, like you're not really coping. You can feel like that level of anxiety, that constant worry. Let me think. For me, I was very tearful. Could cry at the drop of a hat. Someone could say hello to me. Oh, I laugh now, but I was that was like what I call on the edge. I was so emotionally, but I was very tearful and emotional. You feel uninterested in life, like you can lose the enjoyment in the things you once enjoyed. You can feel like you're just kind of a bit robotic, going through the motions. Feeling detached. You're a bit detached from what's going on around you. The big one that's become apparent since being a mum is like not being present. But I think that's relevant even to family members and partners. It just becomes, for me, it definitely became much more prevalent around my son than it had previous years with anybody else. Fatigue, like for me, I had like crippling exhaustion. I could just about get through the day and I'd get home and lay on the sofa and I wouldn't move till the next day, which I'm a really active person. That's like not me at all. Digestive problems, so constipation, diarrhea, stomach pain, general digestion, muscular aches, pains. Can you see how you can put these things down to other things? Because
absolutely.
I'm pretty much sharing the ones I had. I had a headache every single day for over 2 years. like, why is that all right? As I say that out loud now, like, why is that okay? Why did I put up with that? Because I thought, oh, it'll be gone tomorrow. It'll be gone tomorrow. It'll be gone tomorrow. It didn't go. There were tension headaches, I now know, brought on by stress. And the
That's
only
funny you should
decision,
say that, actually, because from the age of, I'm guesstimating a little bit here, let's say 14, I probably had headaches most days until my mid-20s.
right.
Paracetamol, woohoo! You know,
Yeah.
because that's all people knew.
Yeah. I mean, headaches are linked to so many things, aren't they? But yeah, so I did literally every single day. The only difference in them was the severity of how bad they would be, but they were there every day. And then other sort of things are like finding it hard to make decisions, not being able to concentrate, not being able to remember things. You can be snappy at people, that general just being irritable with everyone around you. Yeah, I mean, they're my kind of like main ones.
But that's big, and you feel like, am I going mad here?
Yeah,
Like, what's wrong with me? Like, am I?
that was me. I thought something's wrong, but what's wrong? I think for me, like the feelings of something really being wrong, I think was when I had those headaches constantly, like the muscular aches and pains, that literally crying at the drop of a hat, and my digestive problems. They were like really bad. I was really quite ill with those. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a biggie. I also used to lose a lot of weight when I was worried back in the days, because I'd feel so sick that I just didn't want to eat. And even now, I get worried, I get a sore tummy.
Yeah, well, that can be one of the things. It can be like losing weight or putting weight on, because you can go one way or the other. You can stop eating because you're so stressed and anxious, or you can like eat. You can go the other way. Another one's like spending too much. I used to spend money all the time, thinking, well, if I buy something nice, I'll feel better. Yeah, that didn't work. You know,
you got a nice wardrobe though, I bet.
Well, that's the thing. When I look back, because when I had my career change and went into the world of health and fitness, I took a pay cut of over half. I saved more money with my half pay cut than I did earning double in a job where I was so unsettled. And when I looked, I thought, well, I don't actually know what I've got to show for it, you know. So it's things like that you wouldn't associate with like stress. And think people like, you might drink more, you know. I could easily have every night gone home and had a glass of wine, because it does take the edge off, doesn't it? But luckily for me, and I don't know what it was, I had this thing in my head that said, don't do that, Jen, because that's a slippery slope of something just, and I never did. And I genuinely now can hold my hands up and say I can understand how people fall into that trap.
Oh, absolutely.
Drinking, and then it becoming a real problem. So
yeah.
So yeah, they're like the main ones for me. Like I said, there's quite a few more, but they're the pretty big ones. They do significantly like impact how you function on a day-to-day basis. So
I think it's so important that you share it, and that you also share your story around it, and that we also do. I keep saying this, like the more we talk about these things, the better, because when we feel less alone, I think it's easy to deal with these things. Because sometimes I think we can think like, gosh, I'm such a freak, and everyone else got it sorted. It's only me that's struggling, or only me.
well,
you know, I was saying to you before, when I was going through all of these things, you know, post birth, and it was a horrible time. But I was quite open with people, you know. I guess being Norwegian is like, you live in the UK and like, hi, how's it going? And then as a Norwegian, you will go, well. But actually, that did open up a lot of conversations for me, where people went, oh gosh, yes, I remember when I had my kid, and this happened and that happened, and gosh, I had postnatal depression, and somebody went, oh, I had horrible mastitis, or I couldn't breastfeed, or this happened to me. And I felt it wasn't nice to hear other people's horrendous stories, but you feel less alone.
Yeah, it's interesting what you said just before, because I know that I put a really good front on. Like when I was signed off work, everybody went, you are Jen's been signed off with stress. What's going on? Because I just put this front on, everything's okay. And I know a lot of women do that. So when you feel like you're losing it and everyone around you's okay, they're probably not. And I was chatting to my friend the other day, and she was trying to explain to me how she was feeling, and she was like, oh, I'm not making sense, like nobody gets it. And like she was explaining those feelings of like she'd got a new car, the kind of car she'd always wanted, and her daughters and her husband were dead excited, like, are you excited? And she's just like, I felt nothing. She'd have just felt nothing. I feel numb. I feel like I'm floating around. I feel this, I feel that. And she was saying all these things, and she was like, oh, it just, nobody gets it. It doesn't make any sense. And I just said, I get it. I totally get it. And I will hold my hands up and say, when I was in my second job, the one I moved to that I thought was going to be better, there was a lady there, got signed off with stress. And I kind of turned my nose up and I was like, well, what is wrong with her? Because I didn't get it.
Exactly.
I totally get it now, because it wasn't long after her that I was signed off with stress. But my point is, people, this like anything to do like with mental well-being, mental health, people, when it's not something you can see, people don't get it. And I wholeheartedly hold my hands up and say, I didn't get it. I used to poo-poo it and turn my nose and say, oh, get a grip, what is wrong with you? And that was like in my like sort of late 20s, early 30s. Is that classed as still young, to be naive, not to understand? I don't know if that's an excuse, but
I'm not sure age has got anything to do with it, because I think if we're not exposed to these things, how are we supposed to get an understanding of it?
So I think like I just get it, and I genuinely believe that getting it's a huge part of what I do, because the amount of women that I've worked with, they say like, I don't feel judged, I don't feel like I have to explain myself, you just get it. And I do. I just can't put into the words in that. I just get it, because lived it, breathed it for a really long time.
Yeah.
So,
Do you work with people face to face and online? So if somebody's listening to this who's living far away from you, how does that work with you?
Online, I mean, the people I've been working with locally tend to do it online, because people like the beauty of, I don't know, sitting in the PJs or not leaving the house, don't they? But if somebody lived locally, I'd happily meet face to face, but generally online works really well as well. So
yeah, excellent. I think I'll pop your details in the show notes so people can get in touch with you. I think it's so powerful working with a coach and unpicking things. And as you said, and as I alluded to as well, things can go back an awful long time, and you don't even realize that you got to.
You wouldn't even associate it with what's going on. And I know, like, because the coach thing, I know it's like a growing thing, isn't it? But I guess it's still relatively new in some respects. And people go, what do I need a coach for? And I like, from my side as being a coach, it absolutely blows my mind, like what happens in coaching sessions sometimes. Honestly, it's just like, what the heck just happened? And then when these women, like, you can see the penny drop or whatever happens, and then they go away and they implement. And I think this is one of the reasons I picked up on your podcast, because of its name, the Small Steps to Wellness, because everything I do is about taking all these tiny little steps that build up to something so big. And they go away and they do, because you can see them thinking, oh, is that all I'm going to do? Is that really, and they do it, and then they come back. And the transformation from that one small thing, honestly, it's the best feeling in the world. And then they add something else to that, and then they go and do that. And then before you know it, it's like a snowball effect. And it just grows into this really big thing. And it has such a significant impact on them. It's amazing. It really is.
Yeah. And I feel like I should add also that you don't have to be on the verge of burnout to benefit from a coach.
You know what? Preferably not burnout. I just say that. I just think that generally, again, as women, we put on this front, and human nature, is it? Do we get help when we're at rock bottom? It's that thing, isn't it? When the pain of not doing something is bigger than the pain of doing it. Is that how the saying goes?
Well, I think, but you know what? I keep saying this, like, when you embark on a lifestyle change or any change at all, your body's going to go, warning signs, warning bells, stop, what are you doing? What on earth is going on? Because the body's like, this is new, I don't like it, I don't know what I'm getting myself into, I'm going to protect you by just telling you this is not good. But this is your body trying to protect you, because you don't know what you're getting, you know what you have. And sometimes it can feel safer and better to stay with what you have, even if that's really, really, really uncomfortable, rather than embarking on a journey,
Absolutely.
because you don't know what but the thing is, it's a short time benefit of not doing anything, right? Well, short term, whereas the long term benefit of dealing with whatever is going on in your life, whether or not you think you have anything to deal with. This is why I think everyone should get a coach. I think when we can kind of appreciate our body looking after us and going, oh, I'm not sure I like this, and go, do you know what, body, or do you know what, mind, whatever it is, how this might sound really corny, but I've got this. I'm going to trust the process. It's going to be uncomfortable, but I know that I'm going to get through to the other side, and it's going to be worth it for me. And in the long run, this will absolutely serve us. But I think absolutely, the body is going to go, what on earth are you doing to me?
Absolutely. The one thing I'd just like to say to people, like, I'd love to help people before they hit burnout, and maybe women think, well, do I need help? Do I not? I think, like, just bring some awareness around how you're feeling, like keep a journal, make some notes every day, like just write it down and then look back at it, because that'll highlight like how you've been feeling. And do you know what I mean? And like some of those symptoms I went through, they're not to be ignored. So my advice is that if you're aware, you can do something about it. So being aware is really key. But also my really big message is it doesn't just go away on its own. And I know that from experience, it doesn't just go away. And if you move to something different, it just follows you everywhere you go until you stop and do something about it. And
unless you stop, it's going to stop you, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. It's just always there. It just follows you.
Yeah.
But if you're aware, so I know sometimes when you're in too deep, you can't be aware because you're so absorbed in those feelings. But I know now, I know myself so well after all the stuff I've been through, the coaching I've done, all that uncomfortable stuff. I now know straight away, I don't ignore any emotion or feeling or something in my body, because I know that's a sign telling me, and I stop and think, right, where's this going and what's this doing? Because that, to me now, I listen to the signals. I used to just bury them before. I think, oh, that'll go away, that'll stop.
Well, maybe we should be grateful for those signals, because that's our body going, hello.
Yeah.
Something needs to change. So be grateful for those signals and go,
oh,
okay,
I am now. I wasn't.
Exactly.
I am now, because now I understand, and now I know what it all means. I now listen very much, and I'm very aware. So that's key, really.
Oh, this is so powerful, Jen. Thank you so much for reaching out and wanting to talk to me. I think I've spoken to people about burnout before, and again, I just want to reiterate, this is not, we don't have to get to the point of burnout before it's good to do something about it. And I know so many women that could benefit from talking to somebody like you, and it's not, and I think also why a lot of us don't go to coaches or go to therapy or whatever it is that we feel like we failed, we haven't been able to help ourselves. But actually, we're not meant to do life on our own. We're not meant to be in this little bubble by ourselves, working things out for ourselves all the time. We are meant to work in a community with others. And that's why, good conversations and just being asked the right questions, I think it's so powerful. So I think you're doing a really important job. I really do.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thanks for letting me share today.
Oh yeah, no, it's been an absolute joy, and sorry about the sound. I'm going to have words with my other half, who set this all up for me, and he's probably going to tell me I pushed the wrong button or something, and that the sound went.
It'll turn it back. It's your fault.
I mean, do you know when you're just like, I can't make this work, and then somebody else goes, you just do, and you just feel like such an idiot, because you've obviously been pressing the same button yourself and nothing has worked, but it's like magical hands or something. I don't know. Anyway, thank you so much. And as always, if you want to get in touch with me, I'm on Instagram under Small Steps to Wellness, and I'll put Jen's details in the show notes so that you can get in touch with her as well. Love this conversation. Thank you so much, Jen.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Small Steps to Wellness show with Mari Craig. I am passionate about helping mums get their energy back through simple nutritional changes, because we know that if mummy is happy, the family's happy. If you would like to connect with me, you can find me on Instagram under @smallstepstowellness, or visit my website smallstepstowellness.info. Speak to you soon.